name is Ekor Ovčarenko. I'm Ukrainian who moved to Azerbaijan on the 15th of January to develop the startup ecosystem. I've started my entrepreneurship and startup ecosystem development journey in 2012 by accidentally joining the biggest venture fund in Ukraine. To be honest, back then I didn't know what the startup is, what the venture funding is, what kind of venture capitalists do, and just by chance I got into the biggest, the most prominent venture fund. And since then I've been involved in more than 10 years in the ecosystem development one way or another. So I have started as an event organizer. We did one of the biggest events in post-Soviet or CIS countries, actually even like in Central Eastern Europe. It was held from 2012 to 2014 in Kyiv, the capital of my country, and we were bringing together 300 investors and 150 startups. So it's not a usual case scenario when at the event you have a double ratio of investors than the startups. But that was our concept, and I think it played out well because TechCrunch named us top 5 events in Europe in 2013, and it was very honorable for us to be named as that. Because of the situation, the war that started in 2014, we had to stop doing this event, but I worked with the startups as a scout. I was going to different events, being in the jury, trying to figure out what is the best fit for our venture fund. Overall, the fund, when I was there, did 170 investments. The first 20 exits actually covered the whole fund, so the fund is now evergreen, and it's investing heavily into not only Ukrainian but all over the world. And after that, I joined a couple of multi-family offices. The first one was YouStart. It was investing into not only tech companies but all other private equity stuff in BRICS countries. It's an Italian multi-family office. Then after that, I joined SeedStars, which is a Swiss multi-family office. I was working there for 3 years as a regional manager for Central Eastern Europe, Middle East, North Africa. Traveled extensively, organized events, organized acceleration programs, did a lot of business development, fundraising, etc. This is how I firstly got into Azerbaijan, 2015. This is how I got to know the ecosystem first. This is how I got to meet the players that we're actually working till date right now, and I'm super happy about that. In 2018, I moved to Kazakhstan to develop the startup ecosystem there. I was working for the Info Communication Holding ZRD as a consultant, and basically my job was to develop the startup ecosystem there. When I came back to Kazakhstan after pandemic 2022, I was impressed on what has actually happened in the ecosystem, how it was starting to develop, what kind of solutions, what kind of startups people are working on, what kind of valuations of the companies, how the investment ecosystem develops. So I was super impressed, and that's something that my colleagues and myself were involved in back in 2018 because we were actually building this foundation back then. Essentially, if you ask me, I'm doing the same here in Azerbaijan. We're building the foundation of the startup ecosystem right now, taking into consideration the knowledge and the experience of other countries, like again, Kazakhstan, Ukraine, which is my native country, and some other countries that I had a privilege to travel to. Again, Middle East, Central Asia, Central Eastern Europe. So we're trying to so we did the assessment of what was happening in the country, and after that we figure out where do we want to go? How do we benchmark ourselves with Istanbul, with Moscow, with Kyiv, with Astana? And then we figure out, okay, so looks like they're at a certain level. How do we actually reach them? What do we need to do? And after that, we define the metrics, we define the milestones, the kind of North Star metrics and KPIs, and figure out these kind of shortcuts. How do we actually not making mistakes of, again, those countries, and how do we actually get to the level where they are in the shortest way? So this is basically what brought me here. But in 2020, I started working for the Global Innovation Catalyst, which is essentially on a mission creating 10 million jobs in emerging markets for entrepreneurs and tech people, essentially. My very first program physical program was in Azerbaijan, in this room literally, in the room behind us. It was for 18 students, but basically CEOs and like C-level management from various companies from Azerbaijan. Essentially what we did is adapting the content from Stanford Center for Professional Development to the realities of the emerging markets. In our case, it was Azerbaijan, but we were also running programs in Palestine, in South Africa, all over Africa, all over the world, Japan, Thailand, you name it, right? So the idea is that the knowledge from Silicon Valley is precious, but it has no value if it's not adapted to what is happening right now in the smaller countries. So after 3 years there, I moved to here. I started with just doing a bit of help on creating the strategy and doing a bit of consultancy. And now voila, I'm here full time. Just moved. I got an apartment. I just moved in permanently. So happy to be here. So let's all agree that it's a pretty nascent ecosystem. If you look at what is happening right now, we have more or less 150 startups overall, out of which 80 are active, out of which 25 to 30 generate some revenue, so they post MVP, they're actually doing sales, etc. Out of which 10 are actually making profit, out of which personally myself, I would invest in 1-2 of them. Okay, so let's be honest, this is a nascent ecosystem, ran by enthusiasts, ran by government entities, ran by ecosystem players that have been here for quite some time, which is great, fantastic, but we still need to add a number of things, right? So if you look at the most successful ecosystems, they're all around clusters, right? So essentially, Israel is a cluster for cybersecurity, right? We all know that, right? Estonia is a cluster for e-government solutions, etc. We can create and now name a number of these kind of clusters, but the idea is that the most successful ones are built around several industries. What we're lacking right now is an understanding of what kind of verticals should we focus on. Again, should it be oil and gas? Probably. Should it be agriculture? Probably. Cybersecurity? Why not? But here's the thing, we don't have clear champions within the ecosystem that we can help and rely on, and we can have them as a spearhead, a leader to develop specifically that vertical. So my job is also to define what are those verticals we should focus on and create the clusters. So what the cluster is, it's an intersection of academia, university, students, teachers, etc. Corporations from the field who is interested in developing that industry, investors who are interested in that specific type of industry, and all other stakeholders. So should it be ecosystem players? Again, accelerators, incubators in that field, right? There should be business angels that are interested in that. Obviously, there should be some government entities that might be interested in also, investing into that, and not only investing, but investing effort and time, etc. And of course, international organizations that will be also interested in supporting that specific vertical. So if you ask me what, where do we stand? We're figuring out what is this big couple of verticals we should focus on. So coming back to my thesis on we did an assessment, right? Now we understand what kind of role do we want to play. So first of all, in terms of the vision, we're trying to build a hub for the Caucasus region, which will be a springboard to Turkey, to Caucasus region, to Central Asia and Europe, right? So we see ourselves as this a business hub that is a springboard to all these markets, because the people here speak Turkish, Russian, Azeri and all of that. So it makes a lot of sense to position ourselves this way. So what we're doing in the vision, we want to become the real hub for the region. Okay, and we want to be the go-to destination when it comes to tech, innovation, entrepreneurship, etc. But again, starting from here. In terms of the mission, we really want to increase the percentage of ICT in the economy's GDP. You know, it's a very fossil-dependent economy, and we need to diversify it. Therefore, one of our key tasks is increase this 1.5%, which is the current status, to create it, to increase it gradually year after year. So this is basically what is our bigger picture. In terms of the approaches, how do we do that? We play, I call it enabler role or a catalyst role or a gray cardinal role, you name it, right? The idea is the following. I have seen very few governments in the world that are able to actually be in the operator or the driver or executor of any types of innovation activities that are developed in the startup ecosystem. Let's be honest, the governments should be the catalyzer, but not necessarily doing the things themselves, like running the accelerators or running grants or something. Let's be honest, not necessarily the government has enough of people and skills inside of their organizations which can actually do the job in the most efficient way. And it's not sustainable. Again, even if the government is able to get people from the market and get the best in the country, it's great, but it's not necessarily sustainable because people do change within the government, and then what? We don't have these ecosystem players that are self-sufficient, that are actually developing and doing the business on a regular basis as a part of their core activity, right? They're making money. I mean, this is what pays their bills, right? So the idea is that what we are building here right now at the agency is that we're supporting ecosystem players. So we're trying to develop their capacity building. I mean, we're building the capacity within the organization. So we train the people within the organization. So we send them to international trainings. We bring trainers here. So essentially, we try to increase their skills so they know better on how to more efficiently run the activities. Should it be co-working space, business angel club, or incubator accelerator, or university innovation center, you name it, right? So essentially, we focus a lot on that one. We trying to also connect them as much as we can to again create these clusters, as I mentioned earlier. So essentially, we try to bring in international experts, bring in international ecosystem players, so they kind of bond together and increase the level to a certain high level benchmark. So this is what we also do, and we also support the ecosystem players with some finances. So we do understand that it's very hard, say, for the universities or corporations or accelerators, incubators to run their businesses, sustain the businesses financially, and not necessarily they are ready to take the risks. Therefore, we literally holding hands with them and share the risks, right? So we provide up to 50% on the innovation activities on year one, and up to 25% of the innovation activities year two, year three, nothing. I'm sorry. Sometimes we also do this vendor validation because the corporations or universities and some other ecosystem players, sometimes they run after brands, or sometimes, again, we shouldn't necessarily bring enough of value for the money invested, or they're looking to work with some people who are not necessarily the most skilled ones, or just trying to oversell themselves. You know what I'm saying? So it's like someone who cannot perform that well. So these are the main principles that we work transparently with all ecosystem players. So if we will have a strong ecosystem players, which will then identify their niches and the verticals they want to focus on, this is where I see us growing. But again, I would like to highlight, we do not work with entrepreneurs directly, because again, I believe this is the job of someone who is working with them on the regular day-to-day basis. So these incubators, accelerators, university innovation managers, they work with the startups on a daily basis. They know what they need. They know how they actually care, because they have shares, because they have the interest, because the reputation is there. The government, again, in all honesty, people change, etc. But again, not sustainable, because if we just bring the best people to the government entity, not necessarily this will, be in the long run a good way. So yeah, gray cardinals, enablers. Expectations. I really want them to switch their mindset to building global companies from day one. The biggest and the most precious asset we all have as human beings is time. So why do we spend time on building something that will bring you, say, this much in terms of the outcome, dollar value, experience value, wherever, or you can spend exactly the same time but have, you can reach here with this like global level. So you get way more rich experience, you get way more rich financial outcomes, etc. So I really want them to start thinking global from day one. I know it's not easy to change that mindset, but in the end of the day, this is something that will bring them to become like real global entrepreneurs. So I want to see them travel more. I want to see them hire international people to their teams. I want them to hire remotely people from all over the world. I really want them to kind of like create these teams that will have international, exposure and being able to scale to multiple countries simultaneously, or one after another. But the idea is that I want them to focus more on the global markets and to change the mindset and vision.